Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. As Susan mentioned, my name is Sarah Vargas, and I'm the curator at the Fresno Art Museum and of the exhibition Here She Stands, Women Artists from the Permanent Collection. So we are going to visit with Margaret today and talk primarily about her work, but I wanted to give you a little bit of background on the exhibition where you can see an example of her painting that is currently on view, and hopefully we will be able to reopen soon and you can visit us in person. The painting is directly behind me right now, and I will talk about it a little bit more later. So let's get this started with sharing. Can everyone see that? All right. So I have this 4.5-minute video that I'm going to share with you that is a quick walkthrough of the exhibition so you can see it in its entirety. It is located in the Fig Garden, Duncan, and Hallowell galleries at the museum. And the works selected for Here She Stands reflect the diversity, depth, and creative vision of the women artists that are included in our permanent collection. There are a variety of mediums included in this show: painting, drawing, photography, sculpture, clay work, basketry, tapestry work, a wide variety of things. And some of these artists are world-renowned, and some of them are better known in the local community. Some of these pieces might be familiar to our more frequent visitors, but there are a number of works currently on display that, as far as we know, have never been exhibited since they entered our permanent collection. Not all of these artists considered themselves to be feminists or considered their work to be political, but they all had the shared experience of being female in a largely male-dominated sphere. A 2019 study of diversity in the arts found that even the largest and most progressive museums in the world only count about 12% of their permanent collections as work by women artists. That same study found that only 11% of museum acquisitions by 26 prominent US museums and 14% of all exhibitions were work by women. That is an extremely low percentage, considering that women make up just about half of all working artists and account for 70% of all B.F.A. and M.F.A. degrees. And now here we have spotlighted, so you can see Margaret's painting, Purple Orange High Horizon. It's a beautiful work. I will show you another image of that later, and then Margaret will discuss it further when she speaks. So the Fresno Art Museum has long been dedicated to the promotion of women artists. The first work by a woman artist in the museum's permanent collection was Jean Ray Laurie's Tiger Garden, acquired in 1963, just after the museum began building its permanent collection. Judy Chicago brought attention to women artists when she launched the first feminist art program in the United States at California State University, Fresno in 1970, influencing the work of many local women artists who have graced our galleries. The Fresno Art Museum was the first museum in the United States to devote a full 12 months of exhibitions in 1986 and 87 exclusively to women artists. This launched the annual Council of 100 Distinguished Women Artist Award and Exhibition Program. Now, because of the constraints due to the pandemic, we have been unable to host that program in 2020 and 2021. But this exhibition actually has several artists that were past awardees, so it's a nice connection to that tradition, and we look forward to restarting the program in 2022. So Margaret Lazzari was selected as the Distinguished Woman Artist for 2015. And it was during that exhibition that I first met her and was first introduced to her artwork. I was the museum's registrar at the time, but I was heavily involved in the execution and planning of the exhibition. That exhibition, which was curated by Michelle Ellis-Pracy and Christina Hornback, included work from 2005 to 2015. After the show closed, Margaret very generously donated one of the paintings to our collection, Purple Orange High Horizon. And Margaret will be, as I said, discussing that painting further. Well, now this video walkthrough has come to an end. I hope you enjoyed seeing the exhibition as a whole. So now I'm going to show you a picture of Purple Orange High Horizon while I give you a little bit more background on Margaret herself. Margaret Lazzari is a painter, writer, and Professor Emerita of Art at the University of Southern California's Roski School of Art and Design. Over her 33 years at USC, she taught in the M.F.A. program and in undergraduate painting, drawing, design, and general education areas. Margaret established the design program, which greatly expanded offerings at the Roski School. She served in several administrative roles during her career, including Vice Dean of Faculty, Vice Dean of Art, and Chair of Painting and Drawing. Her works are included in several permanent collections, including the Cathedral Collection of the Archdiocese of Los Angeles, Kaiser Hospitals of California, the Huntsville Museum of Art in Alabama, Azusa Pacific University, the Fresno Art Museum, Clark University in Iowa, and St. Louis University Museum of Art. In 2018, she was named Honored Alumna of St. Louis University. As half of the Lazzari and Evans Public Art Design team, Margaret has produced 8 public commissions since 2010, with themes that make evident the persistence of nature in urban environments. She recently completed a solo private commission for the Mary Chapel at the USC Our Savior Catholic Church. She has written several innovative textbooks, both as sole author of Practical Handbook for the Emerging Artist and as co-author of Art and Design Fundamentals, Exploring Art, a Global Thematic Approach, and 2 drawing text sketchbooks. The 3rd edition of the Practical Handbook will be published later in 2021. And so with that, I will turn this over to Margaret.
Thank you. Wow. Let me start the screen share. Then I just want to say thank you to the Fresno Art Museum for that honor and the Distinguished Woman Artist Committee for that honor that I received in 2015 and the wonderful show and the amazing support, beautiful catalog. What a gift. And now to be honored to be asked to talk to you all today. Say this is pretty good. So I thank you deeply. I'm so pleased. And hi, everyone. Good to see you all. Yay. Welcome to my studio. I'm gonna talk about 3 things with this. First of all, just a quick overview of recent work. Secondly, I want to show you something of the studio and the environment where I work. And then third, the process. And we'll break in between if people want to ask questions, or you can write them in the chat or whatever. So let's get started. Yeah, let's get started. Okay, wait a minute. There we go, my artwork. So I have been a representational painter for many years, and I did a lot of paintings before around 2000. I did a lot of paintings that were influenced by Western art history, where I was reimagining them and trying to remake them in terms of redefining beauty. So here's just a couple examples of works from the 90s. But in 2000s, I began painting abstractly. I still continued the figurative work, but I had a diagnosis of cancer and had a lot of treatment associated with it. And that profoundly changed my work, because not only could I not continue to work as I had because of these challenges, but also I became interested in the idea of matter and energy, my physical being and my energy levels. And then I was looking at a lot of medical scans and x-rays, and I just wanted to find some way to address ideas that huge changes come along in life. There's profound emotions and big transitions, surprises and deep losses. So, Translucence, which is a painting you see here, is one of those early ones right after that. I'm still influenced by art historical work. So that up here is a reproduction of a Leonardo da Vinci drawing called The Deluge, which she's trying to show this picture of water coming down and smashing everything, which is how things felt a little in my life. But then at the same time, the sense of light coming through matter and the sense of natural forms like vines being similar to the imagery I saw in my own body of veins and tissue. And it was beautiful and it was scary at the same time. And that's kind of what I wanted to get at. So I moved towards abstracting things I saw. And here's yet another one. And let me see, I'll make this just a little bit smaller here so you can read the words. My work really started going towards more abstraction. This is a large painting that I did based on the rhythms, patterns, and light found in landforms and water movements. And I really wanted to focus on energy, space, light, and matter. And in addition, the marvel of existence and our experience of existence. So, this particular painting here, which is called Aqueous, has actually a scan of a brain right here in the middle, which also looks like water. And then around it, this linear element is another Leonardo da Vinci drawing where he's studying water. Up here are fish, and down here are birds, because I'm impressed by, and I think about them a lot, how fish and birds move through their environments in all different directions. Yet we humans are kind of limited to the gravitational plane that we live on. And their movement seems to me to be related to the spontaneity of creativity. So I was interested in that. I I always base my abstractions on things I experience. So in some ways they're not non-representational, but they're heavily abstracted. This one, Cliffs, was based on my walking through space in the Santa Monica Mountains where water was flowing below and fog was moving in from the ocean and there were cliffs along the side. But these things seemed so animated by wind and movement that I wanted to do that sense of the beauty of the color and the light. So I'm taking experience and I'm exaggerating or changing them in order to kind of give this heightened sense of the experience. I do still do representational work. This one, Full Bloom, is probably the biggest work I ever did that was not a mural. And this is just an enormous flower. And I wanted to give the sense of it like bursting forth with pollen because it makes me sneeze. And I wanted to show that kind of beauty of the flower and then this experience of an explosion. But this painting, unfortunately, you can't really tell it from a slide, but when you stand there, the brush strokes are as big as your hands or your head. And so there's this sense of being in a space that's beginning to dissolve and break apart. And at the same time, it's still matter and it's still energy and it's still space and light. I do return to similar themes at times. This is three versions of the theme on orbs from various dates. These paintings are all based on long vertical brush strokes that I then interrupt with dark areas of charcoal that really absorb light. The charcoal's embedded in the paint surface, so it's very solid and stable, but it really pulls the light in. It's such an intense black. But then pulling in these orbs, which are as if that background suddenly folded into a reflective orb, that same matter changed. So it's about the absorption of light and the reflection of light. And I do return to these things regularly. Here's the painting that Sarah Vargas mentioned. the one in the Fresno Art Museum collection. This painting was really an important, big beginning for me. This is the first painting where I really started working with a very high or a very low horizon. So this line, it's a simple line that you'll see in a lot of the abstractions of landscapes. It's either up high or low, so that either the sky becomes very expansive or the ground becomes very expansive. And this was just really based on experiences of spending time in the Central Valley and seeing that phenomenon, seeing the ground extending for so long in front of you, or seeing the sky arcing up and above you. And I was trying to get at the textures and the scraping both in the ground and also in the man-made environment, the large grain elevators and the railroad cars, and really trying to, I don't know, just communicate that sense of space and matter. And matter, you know, if you look down here, matter that isn't all that solid, because matter is really a lot of dispersed material. And if you shrink it down, it's quite small, but it's makes its form because of energy. I don't know. That's just really always important to me. This one's a much more recent painting. This is last year. I did this one in response to the wildfires in California here. I didn't want to do this. I had started this one with sky and all different kinds of clouds moving in different directions, but the smoke kept coming in. And finally, if you look on the right side here, you can see these three areas that really reference those smoky skies. But I wanted to show the sky not as a singular kind of static mute thing up there, but as something full of energy and movement and different matter and particles. And so I want to show you here, this is a close-up of that same painting. And I really tried to put down these aggressive brush strokes that move in all these different directions to really give a feeling of this as it moves through, as clouds meet smoke and sky meets, you know, day and night, rain and clear. I don't know. That was what I really wanted to convey. This painting is another one I did just last year. We had a lot of rain in April and I guess late March and April. And it was, you know, it was so beautiful because the whole environment changed when it rained, and the colors in the air changed. And the rain, especially in Southern California, but I know everywhere in California, is so precious. And I wanted to show each of these raindrops as gems, as little rainbows that reflected a lot of light. So that was this painting here. And oh yeah, and here's another one. This one's a little bit earlier. This painting was again dealing with the low, in this case, the low horizon across the bottom, and then a big sky, the way the sky looks when you have big shafts of light coming down and clouds moving in all directions and huge gusts of wind. Um, Frequently in my paintings, when I start, I pick a color scheme before I actually pick other elements. So in this one, I was really dealing with this kind of teal and deep red and orange rust color scheme. This one, this one was such a fun thing to pull this slide out because I hadn't looked at this painting for a long time. This one's such a different color scheme. Um, Very much grays and teals and oranges. So it was just, it was fun to see it. This one I think is more based on combinations of lights and darks than some of the others. This one, another one where the color scheme really suggested itself. This one is based on a trip to Yellowstone. And again, there's a high horizon here, so the land stretches out in front. but there was a strong blue. It was so much fun to paint this blue, I have to tell you. Strong blue up here, strong yellow down here. And then in this gray area in the middle, I wanted to show where I grade, where I grade down, where I grade down the yellow and gray down the blue so they meet there in the middle. And then this one, which is based on hikes through the hills again after a rain when there was a slide and a new part of the hillside was revealed. And you see all these small rocks and other things like embedded in a hillside. They also look a little like clouds and air, but was really influenced by that sense of a new face on nature being revealed as a result of the rain. And then this one, a return to the low horizon line and a return to more linear elements. I wanted to get back to some lines in here in addition to the broad areas of paint. So I think that's the last one of the paintings. I thought we could maybe, break up things a little bit. And if anyone wants to, if anyone has any comments or any questions or anything. If not, I can go on, but yeah.
I actually have one.
Yeah. Hi,
Good to see you. Hi. Have you found yourself even busier during this period? I mean, I know you've retired and everything, and we've all been locked down, but it seems like you made a lot of paintings in 2020.
I think I did make a lot of paintings, but my sense of time is so warped by the experience last year, as I'm sure everybody. And I actually talk a little bit about it at the end when I talk about the process with this one I'm working on. It has been a real experience. And in looking back, I see that I was really involved in painting, but I've had to really learn a different way of structuring my time in the studio, because before my job and teaching set up certain structures and I worked in between them in the studio. And now it was a real adjustment. I didn't anticipate that. I thought, oh, it'll be great. Oh, well, actually it was kind of a challenge, but I'll talk a little bit more about that. Yeah. Yeah. Ruth is waving. Are you unmuting? Are you going to ask a question, Ruth? You have to unmute.
There. Now, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, great. During this period of, tremendous abstraction in your work and emphasis on color and the brush work, I mean, I've had the advantage of seeing these paintings, or many of them, in person, and the surface is just so sensual and delicious. And at the same time, you had the commission that was very realistic, where you were painting realistic figures for the chapel, the Madonna chapel. Can you talk a little bit about having to go back and forth between those two things?
Well, I do it. I mean, I paint representationally all the time because it feeds the abstractions. I feel like I've learned so much about how a color butts up against another color, or a soft transition, or just form and space. I'm really, I deal a lot with space, and representational paintings tell you how to show space in paintings. They show you how to step people back into space and how to make the horizon effective, and how you create color combinations that suggest luminosity. But I was just looking to see if I could find, I don't have anything right nearby, but I paint representationally all the time. I draw representationally all the time. So, my sketchbook is full of things like this. And I say it feeds the abstraction, but it's also an end unto itself, because that representationalism is so grounded and so specific. And I think that's important that continues. Shall I go on and show the studio then? Let's do that. Let me go back to share. And here we go. All right, so I wanted to show you my studio. I work in out of my house, and let me see. Let me go down. Oh, for some reason, there we go. I don't have a big house. I have kind of a smallish house on a 5,000 square foot lot, but I garden a lot in it. This is my front yard last year when the parsley and the cilantro and the beans and the onions were all coming up. And there's a sense of path and moving through that space that I think is really gets into my work. This is another view. This is the backyard after a rain. It's much greener now. I mean, it's much greener than things are right now. We're having kind of a dry winter, but our yard is pretty crowded, as you can see, and there's a lot going on, but that influences my work. I also plant vegetables, and as they come up, this looks so much to me like one of my paintings. I just feel as though there's so much about this that I get from the yard, and color combinations. I mean, look at this crazy plant with the buds here that have this polka dotted crazy color combination, and these leaves, just this colors across there. I don't know. I just think, oh, this is amazing. And, or little spots of color. Or my neighbor across the street who's got an equally pretty wonderful yard. This is a plant in his front yard. It's called a Scilla peruviana. Isn't it crazy? Look at these centers with all these whorls. And then they break out into this crown of beautiful purple flowers. Oh my gosh. It's like, oh, so amazing. So in my studio, I have big windows, and you can see here that the outside is right next to the painting on the inside. Here's one of my big working walls. Here's another of my working walls and a couple more windows. I have my materials on a cart so I can move things around and I can work in different locations. Here's where I'm sitting right now. I'm sitting in that chair, and you can see the stuff behind me. It's my kind of where I keep paintings and my inspiration wall. And oh, here are a collection of some of the realistic paintings that I do as I'm working on the abstractions. And then sometimes it gets so crowded, you just have to go onto the floor. So I'm going to talk about this painting on the floor in the third part of the talk. I am working on the floor for a couple reasons, but partly because I really have run out of wall space. But and then I just want to show this little video so you could see how the light moves into the space and then moves across the painting. So you can see there it is on the wall. Then it feels like it's like the marks I'm making the painting. Then I look outside and there's this flickering light. And then it moves across to the next painting where the light flickers again. It feels very connected to me. And oh wait, I didn't mean to play that again. So so it feels very connected to me. And then I wanted to show you a little of my materials. Since I've painted in acrylics, I have found that I have to have a lot more mixtures and materials and brushes. Unlike oil, which takes a nice leisurely time to dry, acrylics, especially in warm weather, dry very fast. So in order to paint quickly and spontaneously, I have to use a lot of mixtures that I store in jars here. Here are the original paints that I buy, then I do these mixtures. And then I also make thinned out versions in squirt bottles so I can really move the paint quickly. So I do a lot of things where I don't spend the time mixing and mixing for every brush stroke. If you do, in hot weather, the paint will dry on your brush before you get it on the canvas. So you just have to work differently. And I have a lot of brushes, as you can see, and I use different sizes because I like the different marks. As Ruth mentioned, I like the texture and the feel of paint. So this is the biggest brush I use. I really do use that brush. And then all the way down to very tiny ones like that one there. And I have storage in the studio, but not too much. I store things in other areas of the house. Storage is a challenge, but that's that. So yeah, does anyone have any other? I can stop share again. So anyway, that's my space. Anybody have any comments or anything before we go on to the process? Are we good?
There is a comment in your chat, and it says, "Do you ever change your mind about the color scheme once you have started a painting?"
I do. In fact, the one I'm working on right now, I've changed it. It's almost as though the original color scheme gets you so far, and then um, I actually try to take something that is the most, you have to break it up. You have to shake it up at times. So if you see Sarah's picture, if she's on your screen, the painting behind you, that orange that's up there in the corner, plus that little bit of green at the bottom, those were not in the original color scheme. Those were a realization, first of all, that original color scheme was too limited, but also it was this desire of things you will see in the Central Valley where there will be these expanses of fields, and then suddenly in the distance there'll be this bright color of orange or rust or something in the background that just like invigorates the entire thing. So yeah, I do change my mind. Yeah, let's see. Okay, let's go back then, and I'll talk a little bit about my process on this painting that I'm working on right now. Right. So this is the painting I'm working on right now. It's a 14 by 5-foot painting. And the idea behind this work is this. I wanted to get the sense of living in a timeline, and the timeline being this last year with COVID. I wanted a narrative that contrasted flowing and conflict. I wanted a sense of being immobilized or conversely being able to move freely. Now, I am working on the floor because I wanted to work thickly and I wanted to use a lot of viscosities of paint. If you work on the wall, the paint will slump and sag while it dries. So I wanted it down on the floor so it stayed put more. But the painting also, frankly, was inspired by the fact that I had been doing small works, and it seemed necessary to do small works because here we are in shutdown time, or, we're loosening up now, which is good. But it felt like, oh, I should be working small. That seems appropriate. And then something just kind of went bursting in my brain and said, no, I'm going to work big. I've got to feel this space and this movement. This painting is not finished, and I have to say it's been really challenging to me right now. I can't believe how much I'm struggling with it. But here's a little video that kind of shows the expanse of it, and there's a light coming through the window, and so it started off like this with these big swirling groups of paint. And then it moved into a kind of a congested or tighter area or conflict-laden area from a more easy, open, flowing sense. Oh, I didn't mean to show that again, but oh well, let's look at it again. There it is. So you can see how the beginning is very larger marks, and then as it gets towards that other side, they're much tighter and much more congested. This little video shows you how I started the painting. So this is a brush. I load up my brush with a lot of paint. This is why I pre-mix the paint. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mute this. Let me do this real quick. There we go. So there's my pre-mixed colors. There's a palette knife for dragging up the paint. And I lump it onto a brush like that. And then I paint it on in big strokes like this. And this shows you some of the layering that happens. So what happens is that the top strokes will frequently pick up lower areas of color if that lower area is still wet. But it'll obscure it in some parts. But you have the sense of undercurrents, of a lot going on, but not always being visible. This part felt to me to be suggestive of a lot of cross currents, a lot of confusing messages, and a lot of conflict, and even a sense of the way things get torn apart after a big storm and get ripped to shreds in some ways. It felt like that to me, and I really wanted, because again, I'm trying to respond to the feelings that I had a lot over 2020. But the painting, interestingly, is that it's hard for me to see it. I can't see the thing. When I'm working on it, I'm close to it. I try photographing it in, let me go back. I try photographing it in multiple sections and then putting those sections together. And I think, oh my God, I've changed it so much. But then I'll look at it and go, oh, it's not that much different. The top one here is an earlier version. You'll notice it was still a lot darker up here, and that this blue was more distinct, and these areas were separated by a white streak, and there was a lot more purple here. I'm starting to add more blue moving across here, more blue-gray moving this way, and then this thing that suggests everything is rushing towards this barrier, and then it stops and moves back. So this shows that far into the painting before and after. And, I guess you may ask, well, why are you feeling conflict about this or uncertainty? And it's like, I'm not sure exactly how I want to structure this narrative. So I'm not sure that what I've painted on top is a lot better than what I had. So I feel uncertain about it. And this is where time comes in. It takes time to figure these things out. But I do know when I look at this that I want there to be stronger areas of color. It feels a little too pale to me overall. Anyway, so I'm just trying to talk about my process, the muddledness that goes on in this brain when I'm trying to do a painting. Here's a little video which shows an experiment I did where I was trying to see the painting. So here I am in the studio, and this is how I am in relationship to the painting, like looking at all these different areas, not able to see them. I had this idea that I would paint a small version of the big painting so that maybe I could see it better. And so I did that. And so I did this small version of the big painting, and you can see there it is. It was a funny experiment to do. I like that little painting, but it didn't do what I wanted it to do because the surface, your relationship to the surface is so different in the small work than it is in the big work. So it didn't help me get that experience of seeing the whole thing, but seeing it as a person would actually see it. So as it says here, the work is ongoing. So we're still in process. I also want to just show you, in terms of my process, some sources of inspiration. So when I'm working on things, I look a lot at other things just to keep me moving. Here's photos that I've taken of water and reflections, and those kind of patterns that you see here may show up in my work. I take videos of water movement, either at the ocean or in my bathtub, frankly, just trying to see where I can find patterns and lines and shifting colors from these lighter to these darker areas here. All I can say is nature just produces a beautiful painting every millisecond. And I struggle to produce a beautiful painting over a course of months. It's a funny thing. Also, as I've mentioned before, I'm inspired when light comes into my studio and it hits the painting and it suggests new shapes. And then I can look outside and I can see other shapes and movement. And I also like looking at other paintings that I have on the wall, and I get inspiration for color combinations and textures. This painting is a recent one that I did after taking a trip to Yosemite and kind of refreshing myself with a good hit of openness and space through the Central Valley and then into the mountains. It was a beautiful trip. It was right after a snowstorm. It was spectacular. Again, you know, nature produces these fabulous images every second. I also look at works by other artists when I'm painting. Now, right now for this painting, I'm looking at a lot of the works of the early 20th century Russian painter Kandinsky. I mean, for other paintings, I look at other artists, but you can see why I would be looking at the kinds of shapes and directions that Kandinsky did. I look at science diagrams. This is a result of my daughter having studied science. So I look at diagrams and cross sections of the brains or cell formations. I mean, I just look at this thing and I see a real similarity between these kinds of shapes and textures and the things I paint, and the sense of greater density or greater openness. I look at science photographs and images from microscopy, where science is able to show us amazing photographs of small forms. Oh, they're just beautiful. But yeah, you see, look at that curving shape. Or look at these clusters of dense or open cells. I don't know, I think it's really beautiful. I look at maps, especially maps with weather lines or topographic lines. They seem very related to the kinds of energy mapping that is possible. I also do like strange things. Here's things around my house. For a while, I was taking doilies because I had aunts who had made these beautiful doilies, and I'd photograph them and I'd take it in Photoshop and warp it so that this kind of undulating surface would be something I'd be interested in painting, or these forms that suggest nature, but they're jogged and sewn in different ways. So yeah, you know, I'm looking for things that suggest movement and give me ideas of color schemes and textures. I also draw in my sketchbook. I showed you the sketchbook before, but this is a collection of seashell drawings that I've been doing, again, just to keep me moving. It's not necessarily that I'm always drawing something that's directly related to the painting, but I am trying to keep loose. If I can just keep drawing and keep loose, then I don't get so hung up when I go to the painting and go, holy cow, I don't know what I'm doing here next. But sometimes I do know what I'm doing. And that freedom, that sense of being in practice or having warmed up really helps in the painting process. So, as it says, wish me luck on this painting, because that's important. So that's the end of my presentation, and we can go back and do some more question and answer. Let me stop sharing screen. And yeah, so that's that. I see some waves.
I have a question, Margaret.
Hi, Lou.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Thank you for doing this. I'm great. I'm so happy to have been able to be on this with you and learn so much more about your process. I'm interested to know, one of the many things I've always loved about your work is your color sense, and I'm wondering if there are certain artists who've influenced you more than other in terms of the development of your color sense.
There were some that did. Definitely early on, the pastels of someone like Edgar Degas. Pastel, actually, almost all pastel work, because the pigment is so present and not inside a medium and stuck to a painting. It's just like right there. That kind of brilliant color that comes with pastel has always been important to me. And I used to do a lot of work in pastel. I stopped doing it because I've got this hang up with permanence and pastel, you know, it's too impermanent. It makes me crazy. So I don't want to do that. I want it to stick around a little while, I guess. So that was definitely something that was a kind of important thing. I admire, gosh, you know, there are just so many painters. There's a couple who, very contemporary representational painters like Kandinsky Wiley, he's the one who did the portrait
Obama.
of Obama. You know, that kind of brilliant color scheme, which is much stronger. His colors are much more surface strong than mine are, but I admire those sorts of things. But actually, more lately, I've been looking at a lot of painters from, you know, more of the 17 and 1800s when pigments were expensive. And so you couldn't go out there and buy yourself a big old jar of red and just smear it all over the place because it didn't exist, or if it did exist, it was way too expensive. Reds, blues, purples, you know. So they dealt with browns and grays. Not so much into browns, but that sort of pearlescence, that color that comes in a gray field with a kind of a subtle iridescent brilliance. I'm like, oh, you know, I should be doing a little more of that because it's pretty great. Yeah. Yeah.
I have a
Yeah.
question.
Go ahead.
Are you finished, Luke? Margaret, are you finished answering Luke's question? Okay.
Yeah, I am.
Thank you.
The
Yeah.
thing I have always admired about your paintings, and that makes me swoon, is the sense of light in them. And you've talked about energy and matter, but you haven't talked about light that much. You have in terms of the light coming into your studio and the way that it picks up, but it seems like it's what color and light are what seem to drive everything. So would you speak to that, please?
Yeah, thanks, Anne. And so good to see you. And wonderful artist who, by the way, there's so much, it feels like light and movement in your work that I feel very inspired by your fabulous, fabulous works. Yeah, light. I think a painting is done finally when there is a sense that light is animating a form or shining through a thin film or a fog or reflecting off of a surface. So yeah, I probably should have talked more about light. That is when the painting's done, is when there is this sense of light in it. And it's kind of, I don't know, it's really surprising and miraculous to do it because, you know, this stuff really is, it's, you know, it's just goo in a jar is all this is. And it's thick and gloppy and I feel a sense of privilege or joy when I'm able to put these things together, and it feels as though light's coming in or is trapped in or exists in the painting. And that is really, it's cool. It's cool. I mean, you know, I'm not one to romanticize the role of an artist because, you know, frankly, it's frequently lonely and unappreciated or underappreciated or difficult, or, you know, I can play head games like, why am I doing this? But there does seem to be a time when these things come together, when I'm able to make a picture that cannot exist in any other way except that I made it. And somehow this inert, gloppy material suggests light and movement. And it feels very sacred to me. It feels very important and beautiful to me. And that's when I guess I feel like, okay, this is pretty cool. Yeah. Yeah. Is that it? Does that answer your question, Anne? Yeah. Okay.
No, I appreciate that, Margaret, because it makes, you're working with the world matter, but then so much of your work feels transcendent, and it's the light quality in the work.
Well, that's interesting that you mentioned. I do feel as though what I'm trying to do in this is use these very ordinary things, the water movement, the light in the sky, the shadows on the ground. I mean, things that are accessible to every human being every day, you know, because it's around. And but what I'm hoping is that like a Zen thing, like, you know, like holding up a beautiful glass perhaps and just drinking water from it, but being aware there in that moment of all of that, that it is transcendent, that it is completely grounded in the mundane, it's completely ordinary, and at the same time, it's completely in another realm altogether. And I do think that's what I'm trying to do. It's actually the reason why I so tried to resist putting the smoke in that one painting that I showed you earlier. I didn't want the smoke there because I thought the sky should be transcendent. And the smoke seemed horrible to me. I mean, I hate it when the smoke comes down and settles down and it's very choking and the sky gets horrible. But it kept coming in, and you know, it felt like that was kind of an important thing to do. Yeah. Michelle, I think you were going to say something.
I did. Back to process. As a curator, I love that you work on the floor. And when Christina and I visited, you were working on your deck, flat on your deck outside in your back garden. And I saw you sitting next to your painting in that one little video. I wonder, how do you reach the middle ground and the upper area? Do you work in the round around the painting and sometimes work upside down? Or do you have an extension on your brush? Or how do you take care of the surface as a whole?
Yeah, I do work on all areas from all edges, which gives an
Okay.
interesting phenomenon because,
Yeah,
you know, if it's on the wall, there's definitely an up and down to the painting. When it's on the
yeah,
floor, there is no up and down. There is
right.
necessary top and bottom, and they do change a lot. A
Mhm.
lot of those paintings with the high and low horizons, they are started the other way around. But what I do to get in the middle is I take off my shoes and socks, I wash my feet, and
Okay,
stand
cool.
on my painting.
Love it.
Yeah.
Okay,
That
good.
it's
Because it
kind of,
does have, that one painting has a sense of atmosphere all the way through. You know, you
yeah.
don't necessarily have a horizon in there anywhere. So I wondered if you worked at it from it all sides, all
I
edges.
do.
Cool.
I
Thank
do.
you.
Yes, I do. And there's a funny kind of sensation to actually, you know, I like touching my paintings. And if anyone
Mhm.
wants to see my studio, they can touch my paintings, even though if you go to the Fresno Art Museum, you better not touch. No, don't do that. But
Eyes only.
yeah, but I like touching this paint surface, and standing on it and touching it with my feet is kind of it's, I don't know, that feels like a cool thing too. I don't know. I have to think a little more about why that is.
I love that.
I love it too.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
great. Yay. Thank
Yeah,
you.
you're welcome. Yeah.
I can imagine you now painting that painting.
I stand on the painting, and I think Mike's been taking some video of it as I'm doing it. Took more earlier when I was happier with it. Now that I'm struggling, he's like, "I'll come back when you're happy again."
Stand in
But
the middle of it.
yeah, you do. Yeah. Anyone else? Yeah. Well, I have to thank the Fresno Art Museum again and salute you again for the marvelous work, as Sarah Vargas said, of not only showing artists from California, the area, but being such a beacon for women artists, and this, the privilege of being able to talk to everyone today. Yeah, this has been pretty wonderful. Thank you so much for the opportunity and the honor.
Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret. One thing we did share in the chat is, I guess back in 2015, your husband did a video of your distinguished woman artist luncheon and presentation. And so we posted the link to the YouTube video there if anyone wants to copy
Great.
it before we're finished here. It's pretty interesting, and I watched it. It's great.
Hey,
Thank you again, Margaret.
Thank you, Margaret.
thank you. So good to see everyone. Thank you.
I just wanted to remind everyone to check out the Fresno Art Museum's online gallery guide, where you can see Margaret's painting as well as all of the other works in Here She Stands and the other exhibitions that are currently on view. The link is available on our website. And I would like to thank the McClatchy Fresno Arts Endowment of the James B. McClatchy Foundation for their sponsorship of this exhibition and of this studio tour.
Yay.
And Margaret, it's always a pleasure working with you.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you. Bye.